And we'll also hear back from what Sean Payton talked about in his press conference. Of course, when you get involved in training camp, it is standard operating procedure for Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis to have an opening press conference. And last night, Sean spoke for about 45 minutes and was pretty candid. Mickey Loomis, maybe not as much, but usually in these opening pressers, that's the way it is. Sean is gregarious. You could tell he's excited, and yet Mickey gets a different set of questions and is more guarded, considering he gets asked about Drew Brees' contract and what's going to happen with Nick Fairley's money, and yet Sean Payton gets more of the on-field questions.
That's standard operating procedure for both those gentlemen. They have never wavered. You can tell Payton is more of the impulsive, emotional guy, and Mickey's always kind of the even keel general manager with the big picture look at things, and that's why they've been such a good combination. I know some people would argue with that, but why they've been largely successful in this organization, at least led this organization to the most successful tenure in its 50-year history.
Yeah, and we're going to play some of the more notable sound bites from Sean Payton throughout the show as we preview each position group. We only have one guest today. We kind of left it wide open on purpose because we want to give our thoughts, and we're going to want to get your thoughts at 504-260-1280, and you can also jump in our YouTube live comment stream. It's been very active, a cool aspect to the show. And honestly, you guys can get a conversation going amongst yourselves, and Jeff can kind of like say, hey, Larry, this is what they're talking about on YouTube Live, and we kind of jump in that conversation as well. So feel free to do that, and you can see that through our NOLA.com platform. Of course, you can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app as well. But our only guest, it will be the next segment. We will have Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio. Of course, that website went from the ground floor, and he's one of the major mover and shakers in the national media. He'll join us around 10:20. Also works for NBC Sports and is part of their Sunday Night Football coverage. So we try to get as many national voices as we can on this show to get kind of a national perspective surrounding this team and what's going to be happening. Because, Jeff, we've talked to a lot of our peers, our friends who cover the NFL on a national basis, and the buzz doesn't exactly exist. I mean, a lot of the buzz is Adrian Peterson related, and outside of that, because the Saints 7-9 on the past 3 years, and the perception is they're kind of seemingly on that same route.
Yeah, they're very much flying under the radar, and that's not particularly a bad thing, I think, for this team. There's been high expectations the last few years, and they haven't lived up to them, largely because they've gotten off to so many slow starts, and I wrote about that this morning and last night. Actually, my takeaway from Sean Payton's press conference, Sean mentioned starting fast at least 5 times during his 45-minute filibuster. It's clearly a point of emphasis. He knows how important it is for this team, and I think at some point they're going to have to start at least 2-2. You and I have talked about it. I think to have a chance this year. Once they get through that opening quarter, the schedule lessens or lightens up drastically after the first 4 games. But the first 4 games are what they are. They're underdogs in all 4 of those games. And we've seen historically when this team starts slow, it really fails to ever recover and have a successful season. And so I think this year at Minnesota, the defending Super Bowl champs, New England coming in here, then they go to Carolina and then overseas to play the Dolphins, a playoff team from a year ago on a neutral field. That's going to be difficult, I think, to do anything better than 2-2.
And you look at the history of the Saints, whenever they start off hot, they remain pretty hot throughout the season. They get to the playoffs. They get to NFC title games. They get to a Super Bowl. They win divisions, or at least get the wild card like in 2013. But remember, they started off hot, and it was a Tom Brady last-second throw to win the game in New England in a game where we all thought the Saints were going to win that game. And, boy, imagine if they would have won that game and they would have got real hot. But it's imperative for the Saints to start off hot. And Jeff, as you alluded to, Sean Payton mentioned that during the press conference. Why don't we hear – he was asked about why they have had some slow starts, and if they tried to figure out what are some of those reasons behind it. And when you talk about the road, it seems like recently it's not home versus road. It's just being consistent every Sunday or Monday or Thursday because the Saints have turned their dome field advantage into a disadvantage. Remember how many games in a row it seems like they lost at home and they just did not have mojo at home in the last maybe year or two.
Yeah, it hasn't been the same hostile Superdome that we're used to for opponents. I can think of a couple of times where they've lost to Detroit, and both times I felt confident the Saints were going to win those games at kickoff, and it just seemed like they sleepwalked through the game, and there wasn't any vibe in the Superdome. Maybe it's everybody's kind of taken for granted this Saints team and this Saints offense, and the fans included. But it hasn't had the same buzz, and maybe that also is attributed to the fact that they're starting 1-3, and the season's kind of over before it begins. Last year, Sean talked about this last night, losing that opener to Oakland the way they lost it. I mean, really look back at that game. Oakland ended up being a quality playoff team, and the Saints had every right to win that game. And once they dropped it, it just seemed like a downer after that.
If only Craig Robertson wasn't called for pass interference, then the game would have been over, and it was kind of a touchy call, honestly. And you're right, though. You never knew how good Oakland was going to be, and if you win week one, you could start riding that momentum. But look, week one, we know it's at Minnesota, Monday Night Football, big stage, big national stage for one Adrian Peterson. And it's something that's going to be talked about throughout this offseason. You go there, and then if you win that game, you can, at least in my eyes, afford a letdown on a short week to New England at home while they're coming off of a long week because they would have played Thursday night a week and a half earlier than say, they'd have that much of a rest time.
I think it's a 4-day advantage in preparation for the Patriots, who are probably the best preparation team in the league. So that's a huge advantage for the Patriots. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the Saints will be playing on a short week. But the one thing that they do have in their favor is that it happens so early in the season. I guarantee you Sean Payton and his staff will start preparing for the Patriots a little early. They'll do some legwork on the Patriots so they are not behind the 8 ball on Tuesday morning. And they will get a chance early to look at the Patriots because they'll have played a game on that Thursday in that kickoff game. So it'll give them a chance to get the early film, and I guarantee you strategically he knows how important that game is. They'll be prepared to try and lessen that advantage that New England might have.
And you look at it, they're going to have a ton of time to prepare for Minnesota. So you almost have to look at it like, especially because it's New England in week 2, you have to look at it like in the NBA, you kind of have your assistant coaches game planning, a game or two ahead because you got those back-to-backs, and obviously you can't prepare, so
right.
you kind of have to look at it at that route. 504-260-1280 is a way to get involved in the show, and we're going to take your questions throughout the show because we're basically doing a training camp preview. Go through each position group. Where do we think are the highs, the lows, the pitfalls, and we'll sprinkle in some of Sean Payton's audio from yesterday's press conference. But coming up after This first break here on Dunc and Holder, we will have ProFootballTalk.com's Mike Florio. So, and as, again, practice updates right now, they don't exist. Practice will probably end toward the end of the show, maybe 11:30, 11:40 as the updates come in, because that's when reporters can start updating. We'll kind of sprinkle off some of that news by the end of the show. Who's practicing, who did, who was where, who play of the day, whatever. So you don't expect any of that until after the practice is over later on in the show. So Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder. Yeah, they're podding up. He's podding up Jeff. All right, Jeff. Give him a talk.
Okay. How's that? Is that a little better? All right. Thanks, Dave.
Cool. Yeah, he said we're good. Yeah. Well, yeah. Took me 15 seconds to do that.
It's going to happen. I mean, it's gonna happen. I don't think anybody's going to get on us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Saints Media Guest, right? Or something like that, or Saints.
NO Saints Guest.
001122.
It's 1122334455.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 1122334455.
Your luggage combination.
We got a bunch
Florio's
of people on
coming up.
this YouTube thing too, so we can get to that later.
Do what?
We got a lot of people on this YouTube.
Holy cow! All right.
I mean, it's not that many people on. There's only 9.
But
they're
still,
all talking.
yeah.
You know.
Once we get further in there, start picking up too. Like when we get close to the end hour, an hour or two, there's gonna be a bunch of people on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know we're giving them free pub, so it's not like they could.
You can't even see the band.
I know. Oh, we got to put it lower tomorrow.
Yeah, we got to put it behind us.
Okay.
We can't even see our band.
Excellent.
By the way, we can hear everything you're saying. On YouTube, we actually talk to the people because they're actually getting.
Oh, YouTube can hear us today. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan here with you for a Thursday edition of Dunc and Holder, and pleased to be joined by Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com, and of course of NBC. You could catch him on the Sunday Night Football studio broadcast and brings all the news and notes and everything. Mike, I'm sure you thought it was amazing that you got a radio show. It's more troubling to planet Earth that me and Jeff have a radio show. It's like we're taking over the world. Exactly.
That's our strategy. That's exactly what we're
duck
shooting
for cover and pretend like we're not doing it, and yet keep the ball rolling. But Mike, going into this season, Jeff and I have talked to a lot of our peers who cover the NFL on a national basis, and to me, it's like the overriding sentiment is that there's not a lot of buzz around the Saints. Sure, you got some tidbits. You could talk Drew Brees' the final year of his contract, and you have the Adrian Peterson angle. But to me, I think because the Saints are 7-9 last 3 seasons, there's a rightful lack of buzz. What's kind of your lack of buzz?
But there's also a confidence. This year teams bring attention. It was 3 strikes in defense. And just how hard it is in the NFL to win.
Mike, what is your take on the Adrian Peterson situation? We're a little skeptical here, strictly because, here's a guy that was on the market for a long time, and I realize he had some probably contractual demands that may have led to him waiting to sign. But he went to New England, he went to Seattle, didn't sign with either one of those organizations. Both of those are quality organizations, and then he ends up here. We really don't know what to make of Adrian Peterson. Are we going to see the 2016 version or the 2015 version? What's your take?
Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. You can follow all of their great coverage of the NFL at Pro Football Talk on Twitter. And, of course, Mike is part of the NBC Sunday Night Football coverage team. Mike, let's segue over to the other big name you kept mentioning, Drew Brees. Look, he's going into the final year of his contract, and he said openly that he's just going to play this thing out and see what happens after this season. And to me, I'm wondering with the Saints how well they do this year. How much could that dictate what they do with him? Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton, of course, think the world of Drew Brees, and they're going to say all the right things that they want him forever. But in your mind, can you envision Drew walking away from this team and playing elsewhere?
Man, I tell you what, Mike, if Sean Payton and Drew Brees both leave, they might as well just shut this franchise
It's
down.
like any given Sunday when Al Pacino takes Jamie Foxx with him and Cameron Diaz is distraught. Disaster.
It would be a shock for these fans who love to criticize them, but then wouldn't know what to do without them. I think because they brought such success here. Right, no doubt.
The alternative is Chase Daniel. I don't think New Orleans is comfortable with that at all.
Hey, Mike, I want to get. I don't think there's any doubt about that. People have taken those guys for granted. Turning around the franchise and changing the perception and the culture out here is, to me, the greatest part of Peyton's legacy. I wanted to ask you this, though, Mike. We're hearing a lot internally here from some of the Saints players, a lot of references to the 2009 season. Of course, that's when the Saints won the Super Bowl, and they kind of flew into that season under the radar off of a couple of 500 seasons. So very similar situations. The difference, I believe, though, and I want to get your take on it, is the NFC South, I think, is much more competitive now. You alluded to it earlier. You've got the past two MVPs and Matt Ryan and Cam Newton at quarterback at two of the places. And then you got a young rising star in Jameis Winston. The advantage the Saints had at the most important position has been minimized, I think, greatly compared to 2009 when they had a huge advantage at all of those against their competitors.
Mike, let everybody know where to find you because you are everywhere, seemingly. TV, radio, online. Just let everybody know where to find you. I feel like our life is always sucked away because we never get away from any of this stuff. Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com. Mike, really appreciate the time, and definitely feel free to reach out to us to return the favor. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
That's Mike Florio, of course, one of the more in-the-know guys, and it's amazing when you see some of these media startups where he's taken this thing. It's amazing.
And a West Virginia product, we might add. We usually would see Mike once a year when we were at the Greenbrier because he could just drive right on over from his home base. I think it's in Charleston, isn't it? Somewhere
yes,
in
he's in West Virginia. I'm not sure where.
Amazingly, he makes this incredible site from a startup operation as a lawyer in West Virginia with no NFL connections and builds an empire. It really is remarkable and incredible success story.
Yep, appreciate the time from Mike Florio. And let's take a quick break right here on Dunc and Holder. And the rest of the show, by design is wide open. So if you want to get involved, 504-260-1280. We're going to be going through all of the Saints position by position, quarterback, all the way through special teams, coaching staff, because Sean Payton even discussed that yesterday about acclimating himself to a new staff because, look, he's going into a training camp. No more hustle back, Joe Vitt. We don't have any more of that. No more Bill Johnson, no more Greg McMahon. And so a whole new cast of significant coaching changes that the Saints are going through as well. So, again, 504-260-1280. Also want to give a plug to our guy, Corey Johnson. He's on from 4 to 6 here on Sports 1280. He's going to have Saints president Dennis Lauscha on the show. So check that out later on today. Again, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
How'd you know? Exactly where I was going. We got coffee now.
I'm about to make some. I didn't want to.
All right, we just lost sound. Hello?
You can't hear the callers.
No, like cut off.
Oh.
Like it was in commercial, and then the commercials just went away. Like I don't know if that popped up. What's going on with that?
Yo, I see. I don't know.
All right, we're back. Well, for a second
Hold
we
on.
were.
Okay, there we go. Hold on. Just give a second.
All right, we're back. We're back. All right.
All right. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It can always be, but usually it won't disconnect. No, it's something I never saw.
Sheesh. Jeff is as far away from the buttons as possible. We're throwing on a. All right, Dave, I'm going to play a couple of bites in this segment. We're going to do most competition and deepest position groups. All right. Cool.
Hey, Clyde, are you going to the office today? You are? I think. Do we still have the bag in Marcus's office with all those mic cords in it? You might want to grab. There's a. We'll talk to you after.
Welcome back, Duncan Holder. Just had on Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk, and we had some interesting conversation. If you missed any of it, of course, you can listen to it on our podcasts, which you can go to sports1280.com or NOLA.com's iTunes page or NOLA.com's SoundCloud page. And the discussion was, and it will be, if the Saints start off slow, and it's something we alluded to in the first segment, if the Saints start off slow, the storyline reverts back to, is it the end of Sean Payton? Is it the end of Drew Brees? Because of the latest history, 7-9. Sean Payton's flirted with looking elsewhere. Drew Brees is in the final year of his contract, and they're going to play it out. And I think, for their sake, if they want to keep this thing rolling and keep the narrative, all right, under the radar, let's try to win some football games, they better win early, or the storyline is going to change quickly by October. If they go like 1-3, the storyline will change very quickly.
Well, the situation is exacerbated. Not only do they have the difficult part of their schedule in the first 4 weeks, but they're banged up. I mean, they lose their starting left tackle, not to mention their best pass rushing defensive tackle. We don't know if they're going to have their starting center or not. That's up in the air. So it's the worst combination of factors to hit this team. If they were healthy, you'd feel like maybe they could pull off some of these games, or if they were playing later in the year, you might have Armstead and Unger on the field. So I think they've got their work cut out for them. I guess the one saving grace in all this is they know what they're getting into when they start camp, because these guys have all been sidelined. They've had time to prepare and have a strategy and game plan without them in the lineup, as opposed to it happening in the middle of the season and you got to do it on the fly.
If you're looking for silver linings with all the big names that are banged up, that is, you can at least devise a plan. And Sean Payton was talking about the banged-up offensive line last night at the Saints facility, and they worked out Orlando Franklin, a veteran offensive lineman. And actually, it's one of the reasons why Sean Payton stated that they cut ties with Marcus Murphy. Obviously, that did not happen while we were on the show. So, yeah, they cut ties with Marcus Murphy. And, look, you can make, it's a numbers game. Well, Marcus Murphy, I think his time is going to be up anyway. And if you're cut before camp even starts to make room for a lineman who may not even make the roster, I think the writing is on the wall there.
I think the way Payton referenced it last night was they were looking who's the 87th, 88th, 89, and 90th man on the roster.
That's not a good number to be in.
You don't want to be in the upper 80s, and that's where Marcus Murphy was, and they needed help at other positions. And I don't think that's really a surprise to many. I don't think he was going to make this team, like you said.
I mean, when you get Alvin Kamara and you get Ted Ginn, and to me, on my initial roster projection, people might think I'm crazy, but I had Travaris Cadet still on the roster just because you never know what happens. If Marcus Murphy's gone, it does open it up for Cadet, and you could squeeze him in. And I know the Saints like what Cadet has. He's to me, we've talked about this many, many times. I think he's just a guy, but he's at least knows what's going on, and in a pinch, you might be able to still use him. Now, will he make it by the end? I don't know. But right now, I still have him on there.
Here's what I think that decision will come down to. It'll be a guy like Jake Lampman, Daniel Lasco, and Cadet, and who's the better special teams player, because that's where they're going to make their contribution on Sunday for the most part. Who can play and cover on special teams and contribute on returns. That's how they'll make that decision, because when you're the fourth running back or the fifth wide receiver, you're not going to contribute much in the regular offense.
And you mentioned Lasco and Lampman. I have both of those guys on my initial projection, and it's solely for special teams because Lampman's not going to be in the offense. That might be light at wide receiver because you'd have the other four guys, but I kept him on there until someone proves to me otherwise, because Lampman was key when he got banged up and then came back and became a key contributor on special teams again. Lasco showed some gunner skills last year, and he's not going to be a top 3 running back. I mean, we know that's obvious.
Well, that was part of the position group that Sean Payton mentioned last night. that he felt was one of the deepest on the team. He felt like running back was among the deep position groups. And I agree with him. I mean, we could have 5 running backs make this team.
Let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Let's hear what Sean Payton had to say about what he feels like some of the deepest spots are on this team. And then Sean Payton, let's hear what he had to say on where he feels like the most competition will be in this training camp. Well, you see, say, going back to that 2015 draft class, we know Andres Pete's going to play. We know Tyler Davison's going to play. We know if he could stay on the field, P.J. Williams is going to play. We're wondering about Kikaha. Of course, we're wondering about Stephon Anthony. Now, Marcus Murphy's gone. Damian Swan, to me, is certainly on the bubble and could be on the wrong side of the bubble. So you are going to at least see some of those guys we know are going to contribute. And how far can they take it? They need to be vital on this team.
Right, and that's part of that young draft class, 2015 draft class, that combination of defensive players. You mentioned Davison, Swan, along with the 2016 class and this year's class, is going to make up the bulk of this defense and the depth chart on defense, and they need contributions. I think Tyler Davison's a guy that's kind of been forgotten. I don't think he's a great player by any means, but I think he's a good, solid guy that does a lot of dirty work, and I think he's going to start next to Sheldon Rankins at defensive tackle. He'll come out probably in passing situations, and maybe Onyemata replaces him. But he's a guy that has to be effective and healthy for this team to stop the run and kind of stay out of those bad down and distance scenarios that they've had in the past.
His nickname has always been the Rhino, so they need him to be that. Take up some space, take up some blockers, and bust through some blockers and make some stops. But, yeah, I think there's no question he's your 2-down defensive tackle starter.
Yes, no doubt. And he's a guy that when he's playing well, the linebackers play well because he's occupying offensive linemen, keeping them off the linebackers so they're free to run and make plays against the run. So when your defensive tackle works and occupies two offensive linemen, it really frees things up for your linebackers. And we haven't seen that a lot in the past here with the Saints. But Davison quietly gets that dirty work done.
So we might as well make this part one defensive line. We're talking defensive tackle. We assume Davison, Rankins are the starter. Onyemata can rotate in, certainly. I know Tony McDaniel is a veteran guy who they brought in at the end of minicamp, and you just got to see what you have, and I'm sure expectations are that he could be a 2-down guy. You're not going to use him in passing situations. A guy that's been around this roster a lot the last couple of years is Ashad Mabry. I'm wondering how he might fit in. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but there's an opportunity for him. They've invested time in him. He was an undrafted guy from a couple of years ago,
right.
And there is certainly a chance for him to get on the field. And I also think you look at a guy like Darryl Tapp, I think they're going to see if they can move him inside because he's not going to be the starter on the edge. And they've got other candidates, Alex Okafor, they're hoping for Haley Kikaha. So I think they need to figure out, you got 3 defensive tackles, you got to figure out who fourth, and if there's a 5th guy you would want to even have on the roster.
And I really think that's a spot where they could add a veteran guy after final cuts that is released by another team. I don't think they're done adding because they got this news so late everybody else was pretty much already signed, and they may be able to pick up a guy to fill a spot, much like they did, in 2006. Weren't they adding guys at the very, Scott Shanley and guys like that were coming in very late that year. I could see them doing that. The thing that complicates that this year
Scott
is
Shanley and Mark Simino, two of their
in
three
camp,
starting
right?
linebackers, were added in trades in training camp.
I could see them doing something like that this year. The thing that complicates the situation, I meant to ask Peyton about this last night, is there isn't that early roster cut this year, so there won't be a group of players available on the market in week 4 of preseason. They're going to have to wait till the week before the regular season. So if they do want to add somebody, they're going to have to do it right before the start of the regular season.
Well, Mickey Loomis addressed that as we take a quick break right here on Dunc and Holder. He was asked that, and he feels that that's an advantage for them, that they get to see players longer. To me, I think it's basically you can have guys that aren't going to be on your team play that 4th preseason game, and so your guys 1 through 45
right
don't get hurt.
I agree.
I think that's the biggest advantage of it all, because it's going to be a free-for-all at that point. So let's go to a quick break right here on Dunc and Holder. Next segment, we haven't talked about who's going to provide that edge rush spot on the opposite side. Alex Okafor, we look at him as being the number 1 guy, but Sean Payton was asked about realistic expectations for Haoli Kikaha, and Sean gave a great answer. We'll touch on that spot and Haoli Kikaha coming off those torn ACLs. We'll touch on that next. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
That's what they call their tees. Of course, the YouTube people can't hear it, but there's only 9 of them, so I'm not worried about it. I'll say that. They probably hear it.
We'll fix that, though. It's literally the one chord. We'll fix it.
And NOLA.com. Right, wow.
And on the iHeartRadio app, which we've had people call us from like Minnesota.
LiveHeartRadio app.
The iHeartRadio app.
Right.
Like
Wow, that's big too.
That's one of the reasons we went to this station. Yeah, it's been good. It's more work than I remember, but it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, can y'all get on here? We'll talk mock draft already. Fletch has already got it.
Y'all can just come over across the street whenever y'all want. I almost mowed down Travers one day. I rolled down the window and screamed at him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
We don't have to, but
Well, we're going to build a secondary studio in our office in case.
I just didn't know. I know sometimes they have, I know people do radio shows sometimes, from.
Be careful, this is live.
Yeah, we will.
Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh my God, they have a studio at their home or at their business, and it's like.
We got a studio at our office.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to use that. But that's like a backup. Okay. Jeff, were you a boy or a man when this song came out?
Man, I've always been a man. I don't think I ever was a boy, ever.
I was a boy.
I think you still
Bright-eyed,
are to some
bushy-tailed
degree.
boy. Dunc and Holder here with you last segment. And then, like I said, we've got open line of communication with you, the listener. 504-260-1280. And you could jump on the very active YouTube live comments stream. And we apologize. Technical, no cord, and so you can't hear the callers or a guest. Luckily, we only have one guest. But
Well, yeah, our YouTube audience is
Right,
very
sorry.
loyal and growing.
I guarantee you we will have that fixed tomorrow. But to get involved, 504-260-1280 is the number. And look, coming out of last break, we were talking about who's going to fill in that spot to be the running mate for Cam Jordan. Alex Okafor, he's here on a one-year deal, prove-it deal. Same thing that Nick Fairley did. They're hoping to strike lightning twice in a bottle. But, Jeff, last night Sean Payton was asked about Heoli Kikaha, and that is someone who you obviously don't know what you're going to get. And Sean Payton was asked about reasonable expectations for Heoli Kikaha coming into this season, of course, after tearing his ACL, his third ACL tear, 2 on one knee, and there's 1 on the other, and this is going back to college. But Sean had some interesting and really candid perspective on Kikaha. Jeff, it's pretty clear to me that Sean Payton really wants Kikaha to succeed.
He loves him. You
Yes.
can tell he loves his work ethic, everything about him, his leadership abilities. A very quiet guy, but leads by example. And he's got a huge challenge ahead of him, though. And what I took away from Peyton's answer is that Kikaha is strictly going to be a situational pass rusher. His role is going to be clearly defined. He's coming in on passing downs, and he's not going to see a ton of snaps, but he's got one focus, get after the quarterback. And they're going to try and minimize his time on the field and limit him to just the certain snaps that they know he can be effective on.
You figure 20, 25 snaps, but that keeps him fresh, and that's what you want him to do. Because let's think back on this. Remember when Kikaha came in, and they tried to make him a strong side traditional linebacker, and it was a disaster. And then Rob Ryan used his strengths, and then he was able to sack the quarterback. Then Rob Ryan's fired, and Dennis Allen comes in, and they don't know what to do with him. So I think they absolutely know what to do with him now. It's a total matter of being healthy. Let's go to the phone lines, 504-260-1280. Cordell in Minnesota listening on the iHeartRadio app. Second time he's called in. Cordell, what's up, buddy? How are you? Yep. We're great.
Cordell, we're awesome. How you doing up in Minnesota? Where are you at in Minnesota?
Very nice. There you go. Well, what you got? Well, it sounds like it's our generation, and unfortunately, like I said, we're not going to cater to the 18-year-olds because I don't know what they're listening to. Unfortunately, I love that they listen, but I do not know their music. I don't.
Never heard of him.
That's a great point, Cardell. I think you're spot on. I think they brought Robertson in to be a backup and a special teams guy and a situational linebacker and maybe sub packages. And then he was thrust into the lineup into a larger role because of injuries.
First it was at the weak side. Then it was getting at middle linebacker because James Laurinaitis couldn't cut it.
And Anthony.
Right, and
couldn't
Stephon
cut it.
Anthony, exactly.
And I think he exceeded expectations there and played very well, but I think ideally they want to return him to the original role they had in store for him. And I would actually say that if I had to bank on who I think is going to start at linebacker right now, I would say it would probably be Stephon Anthony at strong side.
Wait.
A.J. Klein
Stephon Anthony
in the middle, and maybe Monte Te'o at the weak side linebacker spot. That's who I think would start if they played tomorrow.
A straight-up 4-3 defense. Interesting.
Yes.
Why don't we take we're going to take a break right here, top of the hour break here in a couple seconds, and we'll extend the conversation about linebackers. But Cordell, appreciate the loyal interest in the show, and I know he'll keep calling.
And he's got good music taste.
Absolutely. Exactly. So hour number 1 is up. Hour number 2 is on the way, and we're going to keep this Saints preview training session going as right now the Saints are practicing. Training camp practice number 1. And we'll keep our position groups going. But, yeah, we'll go at linebackers coming up next right here. Dunc and Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. All right, hour down, we didn't die.
The banner's still hanging.
This banner's going to fall on our head. Watch.
It's gonna be hilarious for YouTube Live.
I know.
It'll be a metaphor for our show.
Tomorrow we need to put it lower.
Yeah, no, we're not getting it in the.
We didn't like.
Actually, all of this signage not helping us in any way.
Yeah, it's really not. Well, at the same time, they're powered by NOLA.com, Times Pick Unit.
They do see that. You're right.
They do see that one.
That's true, but they don't see.
They don't see the actual.
Well, we
the
also need to
good
get
look.
we need to get a 1280 banner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do y'all have one, Lou?
Yep. One of those, maybe a good thing to do is these pop-up banners, like the ones that
We have one. If you go downstairs on the 31st floor at our office, there's a gigantic one like
this.
that of us.
Gotcha.
I'm never
That's going to go in
anywhere.
Studio B
Right.
at our
When
studio.
that's done. Got it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do we need? Have you all gone down to see what we need equipment-wise?
Supposedly got it. I mean, if they got the equipment, I could do whatever.
Yeah, then we should.
I mean, I don't know when there's like a big panic for it because honestly, it's easy. It's like exponentially easier for us to do it where we do it.
The only time is really crucial.
Which weekend?
July 4th weekend.
Because we get like Jesse Jackson, Jam,
Oh yeah, and they come take over the studios, right?
they want to bring the studio, but they come in.
Hopefully we'll be on vacation and you could just run best of Duncan Holders.
Is there a best of yet?
Jerry wanted to do one like 2 days ago or so. He's like, we could have just done a best of segment on Monday when we got Peyton. Yeah.
What's he talking about?
All right, Dave, we're going to run some linebacker sound here. So it's going to be Ellerby, Maudie, and Klein in this segment. Thank you, brother. Yep.
I gotta look at my fantasy team. If I'm ever gonna get out of last, I don't think it's gonna happen.
You want to wheel and deal? I don't know. I don't think I have much to offer.
What's his name wants Stanton from me? I'm not gonna give it to him.
No.
One thing, I
Take the trip. I'm like,
shirt today, I need to bring a change of weather.
Commercials. Yeah.
Wow, they're long.
Well, this is the top of the hour break, so it's like they do news updates. And, yeah.
Have you used the word homer yet?
No. Nor will I, probably.
Right.
I know. But I mean, we set up our banner, and then look, you can't see it. The video.
Well, why don't you just move the camera?
I don't know. We need to move it.
Right? Are we on live?
I think he was just thinking it was easier to set up there.
Plus, you know, they're not getting pretty bad on this time.
Well, we could say that unless they cancel us.
You guys are good. You guys are good. I mean, seriously. I mean, I've been on vacation and I just picked it up.
Driving around.
Yeah.
He's the driver. I'm in the sidecar. I got the easy job.
You talk in your own voice. You're an enunciator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I probably need to enunciate. Yeah.
Critique to you?
Yeah. He did actually. Just down the field, we're talking.
Okay, good.
Because you need to have a little more enthusiasm. I'm like, okay.
Do what?
He said I should have more enthusiasm.
Get crazy. Like Chris Russo. Everybody!
One of the best radio broadcasters in America. And he's our friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He wills to critique us.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't take it, we take it positive.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I'm just happy that we got on. I'm just happy we got on the air today.
Do what?
I'm just happy
That's, yeah.
we like the quality of the show is like the last thing I was worried about.
Duncan Holder, hour number 2. Of course, we're on from 10 a.m. to noon here on Sports 1280 on NOLA.com and on the iHeart Radio app. Had a good conversation in the first hour with Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk and began our position previews as we're doing today as the Saints are opening up training camp on Airline Drive. I think practice will end, let's say 35 minutes maybe a little shorter. And just a heads up, training camp practices today and tomorrow. Closed to the public, open to the media, but that means media does not give live updates. Live updates for practices will start Saturday when the fans are allowed in the building. And, Jeff, I'm waiting on Twitter because we're not out at practice. I'm waiting on Twitter just to know when practice is even over.
What would we have done before Twitter and social media? We would have been out of luck, I think, trying to figure this out.
You'd be safer to go out in public so no one would take a picture of you doing some of your dance moves that you kick on YouTube Live during the commercial breaks.
Come on now. Trombone Shorty, we have the greatest lead-in music, and Dave always cues up great music, and I'm glad that somebody recognized it. Cordell giving us nice compliments, which we all have to turn back to Dave for his
Absolutely.
DJ spinning.
We have no say in it, and Dave we're in sync. Not the boy band. Please, not the boy band. But we were talking defensive line.
And linebacker, and you were having an aneurysm because I mentioned Stephon Anthony might start.
Stephon Anthony as a starter. Well, if he's a starter at strong side linebacker, that simply means he would be on the field for like 4 or 5 plays a game because the strong side linebacker basically doesn't exist right now in the NFL because you're playing two linebackers. Now, if you're in a 3-4, might be a little different, but still, the 3-4, 4-3, it's all relative. You have someone hand on the ground or not. I mean, it's the waters are muddied when you look at it these days.
But I think that's his role, don't you? I mean, that's where he's going to be most effective, probably, playing on the strong side and running situations. We know he's not.
Yeah, 4 or 5 plays a game. That's
Right.
where he's most effective.
He's not going to be effective in pass coverage. And look, I think they're trying to get production out of him. They invested a first-round draft pick in him, and they want to give him a fresh start with Mike Nolan, who's a totally different position coach than Joe Vitt. Joe Vitt was a yeller, screamer, old-school guy. Mike Nolan's very cerebral, more of a teacher, more of a Dennis Allen type, I think. They fit very well. I think that combination is going to be very effective for the Saints.
You made Saints fans so happy just now saying Mike Nolan is a teacher, and you're almost alluding or subliminally saying that Joe Vitt couldn't teach anyone.
I did not say that. I did not say it. Put words in my mouth.
I would never do such a thing to you.
But Mike Nolan, one of the things I heard he did, which I thought was very effective early on, is he told each player in his position group, each linebacker, how do you like to learn? What's the best way that I can teach you? And each individually, he asked, because he knows each person learns a different way, and he, at heart, is a teacher, so he thinks he can communicate and get the best out of each guy if they tell him how they want to be coached. And I think that's a very smart way of going out of his business.
Well, we know the guy they're going to get nothing out of this year is Donnell Ellerbe, and, of course, Sean Payton made that announcement at his press conference, even though we got word of it, Tuesday? I think
Yes.
that was Tuesday that was not going to be the case, that they're going to put him on IR and he's going to be adios muchacho. Let's go to Sean Payton and let's hear from what he had to say on the explanation of why they finally decided to cut ties with Donnell Ellerbe. And, Jeff, you alluded to maybe you think Manti Te'o is going to get a look at weak side linebacker. We know Craig Robertson is going to get a look at weak side linebacker. I'm wondering if even Alex Anzalone gets a look at weak side linebacker. So I think they're going to use all these different tools that they've got in acquiring so many linebackers to try to make that position group at least solid. They don't have to be superb, but at least be solid and not a deficit like James Laurinaitis. He was toast.
Yes, I think at this point the jury's still out on that. We won't know till they get into the season. But Sean Payton made a point of saying yesterday that he thinks they're improved there. How much he doesn't know, but he thinks they're improved. At least the depth, I think, unquestionably is better. They're probably too deep there. I'm a little surprised that Mike Maudie was re-signed. I thought that might go into the season before he'd be ready to play. It's a testament to his work ethic and everything he put into getting back in to shape to get ready to start the season, because what he's doing is pretty much unprecedented.
Our Josh Katzenstein at NOLA.com and Times-Picayune had the primo story on the struggle and the fight back for Mike Maudie, of course, a Mandeville native. His dad played for the Saints, local, and it's easy for us, even in the media, to root for a guy like this who's overcoming colitis and had to be off the field last year, and it's something that I'm sure we're going to pay attention to. But if you hear the way Sean Payton talked about him yesterday, it seemed like it was actually a pretty easy decision for him. Let's hear what Sean had to say on Mike Maudie. And with Mike, you know his role. He would be a reserve linebacker, special teams ace. Wasn't he the special teams captain?
Yes.
And rightfully so. Remember, he blocked that punt almost mirror image of the way Steve Gleason did it a couple of years ago. And look, is his skill set limited? But does he bust his tail? And if he could be a special teams guy, I think the Saints would be more than happy to have him back.
Yeah, we'll see how he holds up. I mean, obviously, he has a incredible uphill climb, I think, to make it. But it's encouraging to hear the way Sean Payton talked about him. That procedure he had done, I've talked to people that had relatives and friends that have undergone it. They said it's incredibly invasive, very difficult just for a normal person to to recover from and become active, like an active runner or a triathlete or something like that, much less a professional athlete trying to compete in the NFL. And so that's why Sean Payton used the word unprecedented, what he's doing. But I think it's great that they signed him, and Payton said he promised him he would give him a workout. So it shows some loyalty on the Saints' part. So it's a good story.
And for Marty to even be as open about it as he has been, because it's almost kind of embarrassing.
It's not anything.
It's not
anybody
kind
wants
of
to,
almost embarrassing. To a lot of people, probably would never want to talk about the colitis.
But it's one of the things. One of the reasons he did it was to raise awareness and to maybe lead to some way of curing it, or at least treating it better. And that's very similar to the way Steve Gleason has attacked his diagnosis with ALS. He wants to raise awareness, so maybe there'll be more funds donated, and maybe they can finally find a cure for this horrible disease.
The one spot we are probably, say, 95% sure of is that A.J. Klein is going to play. He's going to start. And by the way Sean Payton described him, he's going to be their starting middle linebacker. And that's the way it's been in OTAs and minicamps. That's the way I assume it's going to be opening training camp. And fans will probably be seeing that come Saturday, that A.J. Klein is the guy at middle linebacker. And Sean had a very detailed answer in his press conference yesterday on his expectations of A.J. Klein. Telling to me that he's already saying, if the defense sucks, I'm going to come after you, A.J. Klein, because you're going to be my guy.
Sounds like they want A.J. Klein to be what James Laurinaitis was not.
Right.
It's the same role, right? The captain,
Sure.
the quarterback of the defense, get him in the right play, make the adjustments to the defensive line, all the things you want your middle linebacker to do. That's what they wanted from Laurinaitis, but he just was done as a player. He couldn't play
Well,
anymore.
they also want him to be productive, and that was the big thing.
Right.
Laurinaitis knew the defense in and out, I'm sure. Just ability, that's gone, and there's a reason why he's not on a team anymore. And did he announce he retired?
Wait, that's one more player that was in the starting lineup last year, right?
Yes.
Another one. So Bird, Kruger, Ellerby. Well, Ellerby wasn't in the starting lineup, though, was he?
Well,
First game?
not the first game because, of course, he was hurt.
But you have 4 players that were on this defense or being counted on to start that aren't even playing anywhere right now.
Right.
That speaks volumes.
And that's why they've done this mass overhaul. So why don't we take a break right here on Dunc and Holder. We'll switch gears in our Saints training camp preview, as I think Saints training camp practice number 1 is about to be in the books. So if we get updates, we will give them to you. And feel free to jump in this conversation. I know we're just talking about positions, but absolutely feel free to jump in the conversation. 504-260-1280, and we will give a scan of our YouTube live comment stream, and we will see if we can find any juicy morsels in there. So Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder. Jeff's one dance move. Let me do my one dance move. My one dance move.
Well, how can I get my hips going?
There we go. What is going on here? Make it stop. Make it stop.
Y'all don't want me to start breaking down.
Okay, all right.
Make it stop.
It turned into a GIF today.
That is Jeff today.
You can't get that. You can't pull that.
Love it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait till I get back to the office this afternoon.
Love it. Good job, Jeff. See? There's some personality.
What?
You don't get this anywhere else. Where are you going to get this from anybody else? You're not.
I could see Deke doing that on YouTube Live. Imagine Deke getting up and dancing.
Oh, God.
And yes, I said that on purpose, YouTube Live, so you could hear that. I love Deke, but I don't see Deke as a dancer. Just going to throw that out there.
No, I think he's a crooner, though. I think he sings in choir or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Are you going to pick up Tukey Toussaint?
No.
Is he related to Allen?
All right, we'll go secondary here, and then jump into.
We might be start getting some updates too. So
Yeah, we're going to be getting updates.
and I can chime in with what I saw. So we can do that.
Yes, you absolutely
We
can.
got to be getting some updates soon.
Yeah.
What are these people doing out there? It's 11:20. So yeah, I bet 11:25 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Le'Veon Bell's gonna.
Oh,
here we go.
Senio practice.
Josh already tweeted something.
That's good. They need him.
Josh doesn't mess around.
No.
Tweeted right away. He's like sits out there thinking.
All right, 10 seconds. You can read them. You want to read the updates? You want to read the updates?
Like this? Yeah, we can do it.
If anyone caught the off-the-air dance moves by Jeff Duncan, they will. If you missed them, you will be able to see them later on YouTube Live if you go replay it. And our main man, sports social media maven Clyde, is going to make that. Is it a GIF or a GIF? What's the proper term, Clyde?
Most people say GIF.
Most people say GIF.
I say GIF because
I say GIF too, but I don't know. GIF is peanut butter for all I know. That's all I know.
But it's going to be beautiful if we do that.
It's certainly going to be beautiful. But practice has ended, and our eyes on the practice field while Jeff and I are on the headsets. Josh Katzenstein already putting some tweets out there. Jeff, why don't you relay what's going on or what did happen in today's practice?
Well, some good news. Senio Calamete, who's a key player for this team and along the offensive line, a swing man, can play center or guard. He actually practiced today despite being on the PUP list, so that's a little bit of a surprise. Traven Doral and Devereaux Lawrence also practiced. Both those guys are in the same situation. So those are quality. That's encouraging signs for the depth of this team to get a full look in training camp. We also had a couple of guys that sat out. Damian Swan, the cornerback, third-year cornerback who's had some concussion issues, and reserve tight end John Phillips. Both of them did not practice. We don't know what that is about. I'm sure we'll hear an update from Sean Payton soon about both of them. The key thing, I think, was Ryan Ramczyk was actually working early on with the ones along with Khalif Barnes. That's no surprise. They're going to rotate those guys with the ones. And then the starting linebackers were Monte Te'o in the middle along with Stephon Anthony and A.J. Klein. So we'll see how that plays out. I actually think those guys are going to rotate at different spots. I think Klein will end up being the starting middle linebacker. I saw him in the middle today, too, when I was out there earlier.
So I'm wondering with Te'o, you don't see him necessarily as a weak side linebacker. I don't envision him being like a coverage guy. And if you're the Saints, though, we're going way, way down the line. Would you keep Manti Te'o if he was just a backup?
No, I don't think I would. I don't know if he'd play special teams. I think your backup linebacker has to play special teams.
Like Craig Robertson, if he does not start, you know he's on special teams.
And
Nate Stupar, the same way.
Maudie,
the
all
same
those
way.
guys are teams guys. So, yeah, that's a good point. I really didn't consider that, but I think it's possible he could be a cut if he doesn't make it as a starter.
Yeah, I would end. And we also can't forget Alex Anzalone. Look, he's going to make the team. Where he plays, I'm curious to see there as well. But you mentioned Damian Swan and John Phillips, and both of those guys are bubble guys. John Phillips, to me, you know him as more of a blocker. He came in because of the injuries to Josh Hill and Michael Ho'omanawanui. I'm so clutch on that. Michael Ho'omanawanui.
I'm impressed with that.
The Who Man. And it seems like both of those guys, Hill and the Who Man, you would think would be 2 and 3 in the pecking order at tight end. And as far as Damian Swan, if they didn't have injuries last year, Damian Swan would have got cut. They put him on IR, and I think he is squarely on the bubble because last year's training camp, he kept falling down the depth chart. It was obvious.
Yeah, and I think they're not counting on Damian Swan. I think he's one of the guys that's going to have to overcome where he's at in his past to make this team. And he's going to get every opportunity. It's wide open, the cornerback position on this team. After you get past Delvin Breaux and Lattimore and P.J. Williams, those top three I think are pretty secure. It's wide open. Everyone's going to have a shot, and I think they're all about even. So we'll see how it shakes out. These preseason games will dictate a lot of that. But I think it's pretty solid right now, those top three.
And apparently, again, this is via our Josh Katzenstein. Him and Herbie Teope and Amos Morale. They're going to be a lot of our eyes during training camp since Jeff and I will be on the air during a lot of training camp practice, saying that Marshawn Lattimore had some nice plays, including a pass breakup versus Michael Thomas in 7-on-7. Of course, that is very encouraging. And Raphael Bush comes up with the first interception off Chase Daniels. So I know how much people love these camp updates and want to know, and fans do. They want to know what's going on in practice. And there's a reason why us at NOLA.com, we blanket it and we give observations. And when it's open, it's, especially in team drills, it's play-by-play.
Well, this is when we finally start to zero in on what this team's going to look like, what roles players are going to play. This is now probably about the fourth or fifth installation that these these newcomers and rookies are going to have with either the offense or the defense. So eventually it should start sinking in, and they should be able to let their athleticism shine as opposed to thinking so much. This offense is so complicated for certain positions, and a guy like Alvin Kamara, who's having to learn the running back spot, if he's able to process everything, I think he's going to have a really big year and play a big role. But we're going to find out during this period of time just how big a role he's going to play early on, because there's so much thrown at these running backs in pass protection and pass routes, and it's just a very difficult spot. And that's why I think you're projection of maybe keeping Cadet on this roster is very valid because I think early on Kamara might just be behind mentally, and they might want to keep that veteran on the 53.
504-260-1280 is to get involved. The Saints are just wrapping up training camp practice number 1, and we are continuing kind of our look at this roster. And look, I mentioned Raphael Bush. I mentioned Marshawn Lattimore. Might as well go into kind of what we think about the secondary. If you look at it on paper and if you look at the players that were playing in OTAs and mini camps, it seems like you could easily point out the top 4 safeties. And at cornerback, you probably feel good about your top 5 corners. I think it's pretty easy to point those out.
Well, who are they then? Because I got the top 3. Who's your other 2?
Well, maybe not as easy to point out. But
I mean, Sterling Moore, you throw him in there?
I would say Sterling Moore, and I would say Ken Crawley. And I would say that, to me, I think Arthur Millette is going to be someone to watch. He's got to fight his way onto the roster, though. And, say, Devontae Harris, the same thing as well. But to me, I think it's Bro, P.J. Williams, Marshawn Lattimore. I would see those 3 very regularly. If all are healthy, those would be your top 3 no-brainers. And then I think Moore and Crawley. And then at safety, Kenny Vaccaro, Von Bell, Marcus Williams, Raphael Bush. And I think Eric Harris is someone, he's kind of that fringe borderline. He's got to return from injury. But you could look at it. If everybody's healthy, you probably feel the best of any position grouping, say secondary, linebacker, defensive front. You probably feel most confident in that group.
Eric Harris was a guy at this time a year ago they were very high on. Personnel department felt like they got a huge steal out of Canada with Eric Harris. He's a big guy. He's 6'3", 225 is what he's listed at 27 years old, so he's still young. And he's a guy that I think you could plug in at that kind of joker position that Kenny Vaccaro plays because he's kind of built like a linebacker. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he contributes this camp because he got derailed early with injuries a year ago, and no one is talking about him at all.
No. And the injury definitely played the part because, to me, I know last offseason you could see him making some plays, and he was a popular story because it could have been another Canadian Football League standout to follow in the footsteps of Delvin Breaux. But, yeah, I think he's got to prove and fight his way back on the roster because you don't go get Raphael Bush if you don't feel like he can make this team. I think Raphael Bush would be like, I'm not going to waste my time. But I think he's someone, at least I feel like, instead of adding or keeping around Roman Harper, Raphael Bush, you know him. He's got more ability, way more left in the tank. And if he's your 4th safety, you feel good. I think you feel good about it.
He's familiar with the defensive system and is a veteran guy. And I think they wanted, once they parted ways with Jarris Byrd, I think they felt like they needed another veteran in that position group because you're talking about a lot of young guys. Even Kenny Vaccaro is fairly young. And so it made sense to add a veteran to that group with Marcus Williams and Eric Harris. You need somebody in that room that's got some skins on the wall.
Yeah, let's take a quick break right here on Dunc and Holder. Of course, our time is up at noon. Josh Ennis from noon to 2. Jordy Holtberg from 2 to 4. Corey Johnson from 4 to 6 here on Sports 1280. Don't forget Corey Johnson, around 4:20 is going to have Saints and Pelicans team president Dennis Lauscha will be on his show, so do not miss that. And we will continue our position breakdowns as training camp practice number 1 for the Saints is in the books. And if there are any more updates, and literally we're following our colleagues on Twitter since we're not out there, but we will bring those to you. But we'll take a look at the offensive line because that's a hot topic leaving the practice. And want to bring you what Sean Payton had to say about Teron Armstead in the next segment. So come on back, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder. Jeff's got so many more dance moves than I thought.
It's going to be great.
They were just playing Freakazoid by Midnight Star
Oh, that's one of my
from
favorites.
my hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. Went to some of them.
That's one of my favorites.
They're awesome. They're awesome. They we had a chance to have them at our senior prom. Yes, and our freaking president, this square-toed chick went against it, and we ended up with some crappy like cover band. We could have had Midnight Star like back in their prime. Disastrous.
Dude,
no parking on the dance floor.
How did you get the meeting with Benson and not get a Dixie Beer shirt? Joni got me one. She got it at the station.
have
Oh, you do have one.
I
Okay.
got a hat and 2 shirts.
All right. My wife got me one.
I should have worn my Dixie Beer shirt today.
Now, if they want to be, oh, do I want a hat too? Yes, of course I want a hat.
Actually is not bad. The hat's not bad. The shirts are pretty cheap. I mean, like, they're not quality shirts. And that's one of the things I stressed to our marketing people. I said, look, we're going to get Duncan holder shirts. Get shirts that people will wear. Yeah. Don't get some cheap cotton, bad, you know. Get something that is quality. Because people won't wear it if you don't. Like, I don't wear bad T-shirts.
No, they become
Right.
they become washcloths.
Right. Give me,
Like, yeah.
You can get a nice Pima cotton shirt that feels nice.
You need to get some. You know, they got them down.
I already asked for one.
You should go down there when you go to the office today, because I was down the other day picking up these banners and stuff, and they had a big box
Dude,
full of shirts.
we need to.
That must have been the ones that everybody ordered.
You don't think we can't get them
What?
as an advertiser?
I guess we could.
Dixie?
You know, I know the guy that they hired to run the whole thing. You know who it is? You remember Joey that used to work at the.
Yeah.
Joey?
Yeah.
That's his dad, the guy that owned that.
Ken?
Yeah, Ken. He's the one running it. He was in the meeting yesterday.
I don't think that would be a conflict. I mean, it's Dixie Beer.
Well, it'd be a conflict.
Benson.
Oh,
Yeah, let's say as long as we get to it before WWL does.
I didn't think about that.
But we might balk at it because it's Benson and they don't want a potential conflict of interest.
Mark would definitely balk.
That's why Port Orleans needs to come in clutch.
I know. You know, that somebody did tell me that the Desi Vega burger place, that's where the old Phil's Grill is great. We have to go
We need to get
there
them.
at some point.
Desi would jump on.
Yeah, we could get them there right near camp.
You know who I do know too?
Oh, you saw my email, by the way, right? Next week?
Yes. And it got me thinking. I'm tight with people who do New Orleans roast and PJ's coffee.
Oh, God, that would be huge.
Yeah.
PJ's, that's
Will
what
they-
I drink.
will
I
they-
will gladly
Well,
endorse
they
that.
advertise
That's what I drink.
with Gus, and they started when I was on there. So I'm gonna reach out to the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will sing the praises of Southern Pecan.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. It's like the greatest coffee in the world. By the way, this is my best player. Picked him up.
Duncan Holder got another 25 minutes or so, and poor Damian Swan. He was basically outed as the guy who bombed out on the conditioning test. Sean Payton did not want to mention the name yesterday, but he is on the PUP list because he bombed the conditioning test. Not a good sign for a bubble at best guy.
How can a cornerback not make the conditioning test? That's a bad sign. You expect a offensive lineman or a big defensive tackle, not a cornerback.
I would expect Hollis Thomas to fail a conditioning test.
Or me or you, probably, not Damian Swan. That's not a good sign.
I think we would be borderline if we actually took 2 weeks and trained. Maybe we'd pass the conditioning test, but maybe not. If we had to push a sled, no,
We'd have no shot.
I'd fall over and be like,
What-
just cut me.
Well, what Peyton said last night about the conditioning test is that, and it makes sense, the defensive linemen aren't doing the exact same test as the running backs or the wide receivers. Obviously, those guys are different body makeups, and they're asked to do different things. So they have different tests for different position groups. You're not asking Damian Swan to do the same things as you're asking, Sheldon Rankins. So that's even more of a bad sign because he's against his peers, and he's the only one in the perimeter skill group, if you consider a cornerback a perimeter player, that didn't make it.
And you mentioned the offensive line. Let's kind of shift gears there because it seems like at practice today, Ryan Ramczyk and Khalif Barnes split time at left tackle, and we had Sean Payton yesterday at the pre-training camp press conference discuss whether he feels like Teron Armstead's going to play, and he was pretty blunt about it. Let's have a listen. And at least the Saints have in their back pocket, and every NFL team now has in their back pocket, the short-term IR. And you could put 2 people on that now. Teron Armstead is absolutely going to be that. There's no question. And Sean Payton still staying pretty firm about Max Unger in that he feels like he could be back by week 3 of the preseason. Of course, that's when you want to play your starters. That goes against the original reporting that he might miss the first month of the season. Who knows if that's going to be the case or not with Unger. Do not rush him back at all because he's extremely valuable. If he has to come back week 2, come back week 2. But it's one of the reasons why you heard Sean Payton and you heard Mickey Loomis essentially say that the offensive line going into this season is kind of in a little bit of a wreck right now.
Well, we could be looking at 3 new starters with whoever wins the left tackle job. Right now, the center position's up in the air. I mean, I assume it's going to be what's his last name? The center that's if Laribius, okay.
Laribius.
So he is
it's
manning.
French for the rib.
He's manning the spot right now until Max Unger comes back. And then you got Larry Warford, the new starting right guard. So I think the idea would be to try and get Unger back as soon as you can, just so you can get some continuity between all 5 starters that you're going to have going into the Vikings game. But it might not be possible because of, you don't want to rush the guy back and have a setback.
No, absolutely not. And you at least feel good about Warford. Every report we've heard from Peyton and everything that Warford said this offseason, he is something to where you look at it and you feel like he is going to be ready to go. And it's not going to take him long to get in sync. And he's got Zach Streep next to him. He called Zach Streep Yoda. Zach Streep is a little taller than Yoda, so at least mentally he's Yoda, and he's going to be getting all this down. And you look at Warford. They invested heavily in Warford. They let Jari Evans go. Look, he's up in Green Bay now and could be starting for Green Bay, but they figured now was the time. It was the right guard market to invest long-term. They were after Kevin Zeitler, who got a lot more money, say on average $4 million a year on average, more than what they gave Warford. I think it's a smart move, and I don't think it's Ben Grubbs. I think Warford is still kind of his trajectory is a little higher than maybe when they got Grubbs, who he was kind of about to hit a plateau, and then he kind of took a dip down.
The unfortunate injuries to Unger and Armstead have really derailed what could have been the strength of this offense. This offensive line had the makings and the potential to be the best line the Saints have had since the Super Bowl team when those guys were all like almost Pro Bowl caliber players. And
I'd agree.
Then they win the Madden Award for the best offensive line. And that,
yes,
when this offense really is humming, it all starts up front. I know that's cliche, but it really is true. This line, I think, has great potential once they all get on the field.
When the line was great, the running game was great. When the running game was great, the Saints were a 13-win team. It shows you that it all starts up there. There's no question. Drew Brees isn't getting hit. The offense can become less predictable, and the ground game could be a top 6 ground game. But we got to see what this offensive line can do because it's going to be in flux. And we're not going to really know until they throw pads on. And even then, we want to see preseason games. How do they handle going against other opponents? It's going to be, I would say, the most interesting aspect, certainly on offense, but you could argue on the team because there's so many mysterious question marks about when can a guy come back, is he going to come back, and who's going to play where.
Right, and we haven't even gotten into camp when guys start kind of falling on the wayside by or getting felled by injuries. Attrition happens in this game, and it's going to happen to the Saints again. You just don't expect it to happen the way it did to so many key players before you even got into camp like it has this year. One interesting thing I wanted to bring up, and we can talk about it at another show, but, I got this preseason annual Warren Sharp puts out. He's an analytics guy, and he was talking about the makeup of the schedule, and I thought this was interesting. He said last year the Saints played the Saints offense faced the third most difficult defensive schedule. In other words, the Rams and the Seahawks, they played a lot of good defenses, and it's much easier this year. They don't play nearly as strong of defenses their opponents, but conversely, the defense last year didn't have to play a lot of great quarterbacks, and this year they get right out of the bat. I mean, they get Tom Brady, you get Cam Newton, I think you got Aaron Rodgers in about week 5 or 6.
Tannehill's improving.
Right. I mean, it's weird. They're going to play better offenses this year, but worse defenses. So we'll see if that bears out. But last year when we were getting excited sometimes about the defense's improvement, a lot of times it was because they were going against Jared Goff or Colin Kaepernick, and those offenses were just terrible.
What's wrong with Jared Goff? He didn't even know the earth was round.
He actually lit it up there early in the first quarter in that game.
That's not good. That's not a good sign.
But what I mean is they're not going to have that luxury this year. They're going to play a lot better They're going to see a lot better quarterback play, and I think that's one of the reasons why they put such an emphasis on fixing that secondary.
Yeah, well, Sean Payton just now from our Josh Katzenstein saying the plan is to have Stephon Anthony focus on playing the weak side linebacker spot. So let's see how this works out. I'm curious. I'm almost ready to throw the headset down. I'm ready to go watch some practice the next few days just to see. But the next time I know you and me be able to watch a full practice will be when they're padded on Saturday. So that at least we'll be able to see it then. But yeah, Jeff, I don't think it's a good sign that the Saints defenses are playing better teams. That's not better quarterbacks. That's not a good thing.
No,
not a good thing at all.
But it'll be interesting to see if the offense going against worse defenses can take advantage of that. That they're not playing the Seahawks of the world where you can play well and score 21 points or something. I mean, that's an interesting team too. I'm interested to see how Seattle responds this year. But the Saints offense presumably should be better with better running back play and better offensive line, but they're missing Brandon Cooks, and boy, I tell you, they don't have a lot of depth over there. We talked about it. If Mike Thomas goes down for any period of time, the receiving core looks mighty pedestrian beyond him.
And you look back at last year's offense, and did they put up a lot of points? Yes, but they put up a lot of points, and they piled them up in 6 games. When they played a team that was, I think, at least had a winning record, they only averaged, by the end of the season I'm talking about, they only averaged 23 points a game. That's not going to get it done, especially if the defense is no good. The offense was average when they played good teams, and they racked it up against bad teams.
Yeah, I think they had some trouble scoring touchdowns against those really good teams. They, for whatever reason, kicked a lot of field goals where they normally would like to punch it in and score a touchdown. And that makes a huge difference in your scoring offense. And we're not used to seeing that with the Saints. I mean, we're used to seeing them score touchdowns. And, I think that's a really valid point is they're going to have to perform better against these really good defenses if they want to get back in the playoffs for sure.
Let's take one final break here on Dunc and Holder. Of course, we wrap up the show at noon. Coming up next, 12 to 2. Josh Ennis, 2 to 4, Jordy Holtberg, 4 to 6, Corey Johnson. And again, I keep plugging it home because let's get a state of the franchises. Saints and Pelicans team president Dennis Lauscha will be joining Corey Johnson later on today. And don't forget Chris Gordy from 8 to 10, and he has been having some very good shows. So if you want to listen to some morning radio when you're taking out all the eye boogers out of your eyes, listen to Chris Gordy. So one final segment, Sports 1280, NOLA.com and the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
What time is the Coach O thing?
Yes, sir. 7
7 at.
walk-ons, like upstairs.
Okay.
That just means I can go get a drink or two afterwards.
Yeah, I'm gonna see. I got some people that want to.
I'm not staying out late because, let's see, last week, let's see, what was it, Thursday we had drinks or something?
Yeah.
And I felt like crap for the next day of the show.
I know. And you want to be sharp on the show.
Yeah, I
agree.
can't, like,
Yeah. What's he doing? Talking to a group or something?
Mm-hmm.
Coach O?
Mm-hmm.
Amos sent Peyton audio already.
I don't think we have time to do it.
Yeah. Good he did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to Dave anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you this.
Yeah, we ended up getting Peyton's audio from his presser, but we don't have time to run it all.
I just sent it to you right now, Dave.
Okay. Final segment on your Thursday edition of Dunc and Holder. Jeff, I'm going to give our listeners a tease. I did it yesterday, and I'm going to do it again today. We have not talked a ton of LSU football. We've talked about it earlier this week with Pete Thamel, and we've talked about it with Pat Forty, and we've had Ron Higgins on throughout the 9 days of the life of this show. But something tells me tomorrow we may have a little more LSU chatter. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Is that a radio tease? Is that what that is?
It's mysterious, and people are probably wondering what on planet Earth are we talking about. Like yesterday, I said maybe we can have Dandy Don on. I questioned if he was actually a real human. People have told me yes.
The intrigue is overwhelming.
Clyde thinks I'm an idiot over here. Our social media guys laughing at us. They're like,
mean-
yes, he's of course real.
What do you mean thinks?
Of course, exactly. Yeah, he knows I'm an idiot, so that's okay. But if you missed any of our show You can go check it out. We'll have the podcast rocking at sports1280.com, also NOLA.com's iTunes page and NOLA.com's SoundCloud page, and we have a daily post kind of giving a rewind of the show. That's on NOLA.com as well. So, Jeff, 1 day of training camp in the books. I, for one, actually didn't miss sweating since we were on the air. All of our colleagues did all the work for us. Are we becoming Duncan Holder divas? Probably so.
Oh, becoming. I think we arrived as Duncan Holder divas. And look, the heat index was about 96 at 9 a.m. Yeah, I do not miss standing out there. It's the longest 3 weeks of the year, not only for the players and coaches, but for the media. We're not digging ditches, but it's no fun standing out there in that heat watching practice by any means. And that's why I miss West Virginia so much.
You should have seen our engineer Luke come in. I think he stood outside for 5 minutes, and it was like he just took a shower. He was dripping sweat. Maybe he was just nervous that we were going to screw up the show. That's probably what it was.
That's where the sweat was coming from.
Absolutely. I would sweat that as well. But yeah, so we will have, of course, continuing training camp chatter on tomorrow's show. And we will, of course, hear what some of the players had to say after today's practice. We're having tomorrow, obviously, because they're talking now, and we're on the air. So a lot of players talking today. Drew Brees, Zach Strief, Mike Maudie, Cam Jordan. Trying to think of who else was on the list. I think Craig Robertson was part of that group.
Right.
So a lot of headliners on day one of camp, and you would come to expect that as well. But Jeff, the process of training camp, it's something that every day we're going to have updates, and it could change from one day to the next. It's almost like, I know people are craving for info, but you can't live and die on one day. Look, Stephon Anthony's at weak side linebacker. Let's see if he's there in a week. Let's see if he's there in 2 weeks. If A.J. Klein's back in middle linebacker, especially on defense. They're going to be mixing and matching all over the place.
No doubt about it. And I think until we get into the preseason and start seeing guys perform in games, it's going to be a fluid situation at a number of positions. More than any time I can remember recently, they've got more open competitions than they've had any time since maybe the first year of the Peyton Breeze era. I mentioned that in my column the other day. You could make a case for about 70 players to make the final 53. And that's way more than any time I can remember. And I'll tell you one thing, though, we are missing today is the new locker room, the overhauled, renovated Saints locker room, which I think we're going to have some video up on NOLA.com. If you're into that kind of thing, it's supposed to be Boffo renovation, according to Sean Payton. Move some lockers around. They've got all kinds of stuff going on in there, lots of new signage up, kind of modernized it, and it's phase 2 of a renovation here at the facility, the Ochsner Sports Performance Center, officially now. And
Jeff, you were paid under the table at least $33 for that plug.
Yes,
you just did.
I will gladly take it. No,
you'll get a free prostate exam at Ochsner for that plug.
I can't think if you were there with me last year. At one point last year, ended up, it was you and I. We went and remember Jason Mitchell gave us kind of a tour of the locker, the meeting rooms,
yes.
And they had all these new, huge, massive pictures of great Saints players. I mean, Saints fans would geek out if they got that tour and got to see all these really interesting kind of nostalgia, which I think, frankly, has been needed out here at this facility for a while in the football operations.
Yeah, normally in training camp we don't have an open locker room, but I think Sean Payton wants to show everybody what the buzz is about. And we saw the construction during OTAs and mini camps, and we're wondering what it was going to be like. And, no, it's pretty cool. So I would anticipate that video coming up at NOLA.com later on today. But like I said, training camp, day 1 is in the books. Closed practice tomorrow for the public, still open to the media. And then on Saturday is the first day of open practices. And again, Saturday's practice we know is quote-unquote sold out, even though tickets are free. And got to give the NewOrleansSaints.com a plug because that's where you go get tickets. You got to have a ticket. to get into a Saints training camp practice when they're open to the public.
And I think the weekend is sold out completely now.
Okay.
But for next week, you'll be able to get tickets if you want to come out. And I would suggest doing that because I don't think it'll be nearly as crowded. It gets pretty packed up in those stands on the weekend. You're standing right next to people sweating. I don't see the joy in any of that.
And get to the top flight of the bleachers so you could stare over us because we will be standing in front of you.
And
It's
people
just
will
what
be
it is.
yelling at us like we're supposed to lay on the ground or something. They've never figured that out. We need to get that fixed. And on the top row, not only do you get a better sight line, but you get a little bit of a breeze. What breeze you get in Louisiana.
Absolutely. Want to thank Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com joining the show. And want to thank all y'all listening. We'll be back here 10 a.m. to noon tomorrow. Again, NOLA.com, iTunes, NOLA.com, SoundCloud, Sports1280.com. You can catch the podcast of this show. Josh Ennis coming up next, noon to 2. And don't forget, Jordy Holtberg 2 to 4, Corey Johnson 4 to 6, Dennis Lauscha on Corey's show. For Jeff Duncan, I'm Larry Holder. Thanks to Claude and thanks to our guys in the studio. Thank you.
Who was that? That was awesome.
Thank you, buddy. We survived. Yep, thanks.